call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lin?
Here.
Dr. Lee? Here. Mr. Hecker? Here. Mr. Antonori?
Here.
Dr. Romero?
And we trust that Dr. Romero will join us, but we do have a quorum.
You do have a quorum.
Next order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Hecker, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 3, approval of the April 6 meeting summary. You've had a chance to look at that, I trust. Are there any additions or corrections to the summary as presented?
Mr. Chair, I would move their adoption.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Opposed say no. Motion carried and is so ordered. I have no slips regarding testimony at a public hearing. Is there anyone present who wishes to address the committee? Seeing none, hearing none, we'll dispense with that portion of the agenda and move directly into item 5, which is the committee review, deliberation, and action. Your agreement last time to begin at least our discussions with map 2B2. And just to clarify, Dr. Romero submitted a map which was originally labeled 4.1, and I think that was probably because he had originally submitted a map 4 and this was an iteration, but it was so closely related to 2B2 that I thought for consideration purposes we would rename it with his permission, which he graciously gave. And so it is labeled 2B2A. And that keeps us in our direction of starting with 2B2 and moving forward. Once you get settled, Dr. Romero, I thought maybe we'd ask you to kind of give us your thoughts about 2B2A and what you did to modify 2B2 to get there. Whenever you're ready.
Mr. Chair. Okay, given what you've asked me to do, basically, if you recall, at our last meeting, I tried to get a perspective from all of the different members of the committee and try to figure out what each member was hoping to gain through this process. And so we took a look, we agreed on examining 2B2, and I had created map 4. And in map 4, what I was trying to accomplish was to try to gain the greatest degree of accommodation in regards to section 2, trying to create as much demographic parity as possible. And then my next priority was to try to keep the incumbents in particular areas. And we went through that map, we saw that. And then we agreed, like I said before, 2.2, 2.B2, went back, took a look at that, and I tried to figure out, again, my first priority was demographic parity in terms of section 2, trying to accomplish that, and then at the same time, hearing what you had asked in terms of trying to keep Marana whole. And so those are my two top priorities in that perspective. Again, number 1 being adhering to section 2, trying to create as much demographic parity in that regard. And this is what we came up with. I used the District R, manipulated the map in different ways, went back and forth trying to assess what impact the changes had, and we ended up with 4.1, which is now 2B2A. My forgiveness. Forgive me for that.
No, thank you, Dr. Romero. You do have from staff both the statistical analysis of 2B2 and 2B2A as compared to the current districts. You also have the same exercise that originally Mr. Antonori undertook in looking at voter performance in prior elections, and you see that laid out in 2B.2 and 2B.2a, and you can see those differences. Also, Dr. Lee's concerned about percentage of unincorporated versus incorporated issues. That also has been delineated for you on one of your sheets. And so all of those, and then, then the analysis that Dr. Romero was just talking about in terms of Section 2 and minority participation, that also is outlined on a sheet that's in your packet, which shows the different variations in each of the districts of minority voting strength, both population by race and then voting age population by Latinx and Black. And so you have all of that information in front of you, and I'm delighted to have you tell me where we go next. Dr. Lee.
Dr. Romero, thank you, Dr. Lynn, Chair Lynn. Dr. Romero, the only thing I would say is that it takes, both 2B2 and 2B2A severely, well, not severely, okay, 2.9% difference in CVAP minority in District 2, which I'm representing. It goes from 59.2, which was done at the last iteration, down to 56, up to 56.3, meaning the minority change went down. So what I did was I took the 4.1 map, which I found out was really the map that you're recommending, and I kind of did a little changing, and it looks like some of the changes I made actually, keeping in mind that most of it is stays the same, takes all of Marana into District 3. Because if you look at the incorporated in 2B2A as well as 2B2, you still have 3% of Marana in District 1. So I took it down to 0, so that in effect Marana would be whole with District 3, as is Sahuarita with District 2. So it's very similar, but I again moved some of that, which, oh, no problem. So is it possible to share my screen?
I'm not sure we could do that.
It's in the shared maps as 4.1.A.
Are we able to pull that up,
Well, we can
Eric,
certainly pull that
from
up.
Districtor?
I will bring that up.
Thank you.
And it may take a while to do the statistical analysis to determine what other changes may have occurred, but we can certainly look at that configuration.
Yes, and thank you. And I would say that the current configuration for District 2 takes away almost 3% in the minority CVAP, so I am a little concerned about that.
4.1A is now on the screen.
Okay, and that would give us roughly a 3.4 population deviation, plus or minus? If I'm doing the math correctly.
That's about correct, yes.
So it reduces 1 and 4, which are the high-growing, the fast-growing districts, and it gives more to 2, 3, and 5. And it puts back the minority in, actually, all 3 districts 1 increases minority, 2 increases minority, 3 decreases slightly, 4 increases, as does 5.
So that breakdown is called up on the screen. It's not as detailed as we have on the other sheet, but just for comparison purposes.
And as you can see, it pretty much, if you go straight down Shannon all the way up, that's what I did, trying to make it, which is that. So it's a straight up Shannon. I believe that's Shannon or Thornydale.
But you split precincts.
I don't think so. Did I?
I'm not certain.
No, I don't.
There are very few straight lines up there for precincts.
Can you see if I split precincts going straight?
I don't believe it's possible in Districtor to split precincts.
No, I don't think so.
So it must
Okay.
can't
be.
split.
All right. So,
But, yes.
good. That's good.
So if you can put the incorporated on the map, please, what it does is you can see what it does is it took all of Marana, keep going up a little, because the one that Dr. Romero submitted had still some of Marana in 1. It takes it totally out of 1. Do you see that now? It's all,
Yes.
yeah, because otherwise you still had, I mean, it was a little bit, but it was still there. So
Yeah.
this changes, so I know that Marana would be happy with that.
Got you. Other comments or questions? Dr. Romero?
Can we go back to the data, the evaluation piece?
Please say that again.
Back to evaluation on this map, the data set. Thanks, Eric.
There we go, thank you. Can we open to both by population by race and the voter? There we go, okay. Just trying to do a data comparison.
No, yeah.
Chairman Lynn,
Yes, Dr. Romero.
question for Dr. Lee.
Certainly.
In the data that I'm looking at here, in terms of the data set that we were provided, and what I'm looking at there, it seems as if though 2B2A has stronger minority data than what I'm looking at right there.
So maybe I'm looking at it incorrectly, but what I did was I took the voting age population by race and I subtracted the white. So for white, for number 1, for District 1, 28.8% minority. Currently, it's at 24.3. For number 2, I did the, I subtracted the 39.3 from 100, and I got 60.7% minority, which currently, if you look at, go back to 2B2A, it's at 56.3. This would bring it up to 60.7. Am I not doing it correctly?
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Dr. Lee, if you look at for example, Hispanic voting age population, District 2, it says 47.9% on your map. And that same comparable figure on Dr. Romero's map is 48.1% under voting age population. So it's actually a lower Hispanic population.
Why would it be then, if you're looking at total minority right now and before us, it says 30, if you look at the white population, it's 39.3. So I'm looking at total minority.
The other thing to keep in mind is that citizen voting age population is different than voting age population, which is on just the districtor site.
Correct, yes.
And we are looking at CVAP across the board, correct? So that's what that report had told us to do? So help me understand, is the change that I was recommending, which has more minority?
Sure, so
If you separate from Hispanic, total minority.
I don't know,
CVAP.
and I'm looking, Eric, is there a way to get total minority on district? Or our legal experts were most concerned about Hispanic voting age population, citizen voting age population. This is just voting age population, but they track very closely, so it's fine to look at this. So the 47.9% on your map is lower than in Dr. Romero's map of 48.1%.
Well, this one says it's 47.9. I'm looking at what's right in front of us.
Correct. And that's lower than Dr. Romero's map of 48.1%.
So
Hispanic.
by 0.2%.
correct.
So it's basically
Very close.
very close, right. And then with 3, again, I don't know how to do total minority, but I just did 59.2 for white minus 100, and I got for District 3 40.8, and currently with Dr. Romero's it's 39.3. So, and then the District 4 goes from 26.8 with Dr. Romero's to 28% minority. And then with District 5, it goes from 58.4 to 62.2. So that's what I've got, whether or not, that I did it my own way, because there's no way to tell exactly all minorities, so that's how I calculated it.
Is there a way, Eric, quickly to take this map that we're currently looking at and overlay it on Dr. Romero's map so that we can see where the changes were made to get this configuration?
I can do that in about 5 to 7 minutes.
Would that be helpful to folks? All right, would you start that process, and let's see if there's other considerations that we want to talk about. I just, rather than try to have you remember which precincts you moved, we
I
could take a
don't
look
remember,
at...
because I don't know.
Yeah, we could take a look at which ones moved map to
Yeah.
map and get a sense of that.
That'd be helpful.
Any other questions while we're waiting? Eric's working on that. Questions for Dr. Lee or for Dr. Romero on either of their two maps? I think the good news is that I think both of them tried very hard to take into account all of the things we were trying to achieve. And the differences, while seemingly small, depending on which category we're talking about, there are going to be some trade-offs, and I think one of the trade-offs we're going to have to work with is total population deviation may go up if we want to be sure that we have minority voting strength in the two districts that we're trying to deal with. It's just a function of you go to the next precinct and you're either overpopulating or diluting, one of the two. So you can't really go as far as you might like to go to get close on both.
Yes.
And so I think it's one of the issues that we probably ought to deal with collectively is of the population deviation, assuming we stay under what would be allowable, is that of lesser importance or greater importance than maintaining the Section 2 minority strength? My personal opinion is it's of lesser importance. As long as we stay within the deviation, that won't get us into difficulty with constitutional issues.
Mr. Lynn?
Dr.
I think most of the
Romero.
maps we're looking at does that in terms of staying within the deviation framework. So I think we're good in that regard. And that was also something I was concerned with as well, and I'm sure Dr. Lee was. Don't mean to put words in her mouth, but I'm sure she was concerned with that as well.
Yeah, I think we all are to a greater or lesser extent, and to the extent that Dr. Lee's map, I'll refer to it that way because it's easier than 4.1A or whatever. Dr. Lee's map does account for some underpopulation in the districts where we figured that growth would occur. I don't want to put pressure on Eric, but we're just kind of hanging loose till we can look at it.
Chair Lynn?
Yes, Dr. Lee.
Yeah, I would like to say that, when I was doing, and I just did it right before here because I wanted to try and, for District 2, I wanted the minority base to come back, so that, because it was lower. So I think that was the primary impetus behind it. But then when I went to the incorporated, unincorporated, I saw that Dr. Romero's map still had Marana in one, and then and so I tried to move it straight down Shannon, as you see, so none of it would be in one. None of Marana would be in one.
Mr. Chair, Diana just received a comment from the town of Marana, if you would permit her to read that into the record.
Did you hear what she said?
I'm sorry, Nicole, one more time, it was hard to hear.
We just received a comment from the town of Marana, if we could read that into the record.
If you have it, can you read it into the record?
Yes, I can. We just received this from the town saying the town of Marana supports either District 1 or District 3 as long as the town is in one district. By Ed Honey.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I got that same feedback from the town of Sahuarita as well. So I got, I guess you could say, tentative approval for 2B2, that they liked that. Even though we had looked at possibly moving Precinct 84 back, after speaking with councilmen from Sahuarita, they were clear to me, and again, they just voted, as we've seen in the statement that we got, that they verified that they would prefer that not to occur, that 84 stay under 2B2. So I'm back to supporting the original map without changes. And if I could add another comment, that 2B2 also creates a significant, in my opinion, population offsets between the two growth districts and the two districts that aren't showing a lot of growth. It's much greater than in 2B2A. Not that 2B2A isn't bad, it's just that I think it's closer to the goal of trying to account for growth in those two other districts over time by bumping up the populations in 2 and 5 and offsetting the populations in 1, 3, and 4. So it does a really good job of that. So I'm still leaning towards 2B2 based on that. And that fact that it meets the approval of the communities of interest as well. So
I appreciate that. Dr. Lee's point is, is well taken in the sense that there was a little residue of Marana, about 3%, I think is the percentage, that was left in 2B2. And what she's done is taken that next step to the east to move the remainder of Marana into District 3.
What two precincts was that? Was that one? I'm looking here. Was it 15 and?
I don't know, but it was the 3%. So basically, we went straight up this line right here.
Mr. Chair, the map is on the screen now.
Oh,
Great.
okay. There we go.
So there were actually a number of precincts down toward the bottom of the other map that needed to move west. in order to achieve having all of Marana in one district.
Right.
So it looks like 124 out of District 4 is moved.
Mr. Chair, there are several, my guess is at least 10 precincts that are outside of the town of Marana that were moved into District 3 under Dr. Lee's map.
Outside the town of Marana.
Correct. By just going down Shannon Road.
Yes, Chair Lynn?
Yes.
So what I did was, and look for the straightest line, so that's why I went straight up Shannon. Is that Shannon? Is that Shannon? Or is it Thornydale? The blue line right up the middle.
I think it's Shannon.
So anything left of Shannon becomes 3.
Well, certainly the map ought to have one straight line on it.
But
That may be the only one.
in order to do that, it threw off District 1. So in order to make that up, I took some of the 3 at the bottom into 1. So that's what those are.
Right. Well, what's your pleasure with respect to, again, we now have 3 maps that were sort of under consideration, all sort of in the same family, if you will. I'm going to suggest that all the maps are sort of in the 2B category. 2B2, 2B2A, and this map are sort of in the same family of maps, because I think in all instances, most, if not all, of Marana are in one district, and most, if not all, of Sahuarita are in one district, and those are improvements certainly that we can tout. Mr. Antonori.
Mr. Chair, again, with the respect to 2B2A, the one move that I think Dr. Morrow made was moving 83 into 3. That moves a somewhat sizable portion of the town of Sahuarita into District 3 out of the original 2B2. So that's the only problem I would have with that. Other than that, I mean, there's not much difference, to be honest, between the 2 maps. But again, if we're going to try to keep the towns together, then, along with keeping Marana together and keeping Sahuarita together, that would be the only thing that I had with 2B2A, and why I still lean towards the original 2B2, is that does most of Sahuarita with the exception of one little bit of a precinct there.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Antonori. I think we nailed it with 2B2. I think it accomplished our goals, and the input that we've received from various jurisdictions and individuals.
Other comments? I mean, I know that, having done a little redistricting in my life, I know that there are 8,257 ways to skin every cat. And certainly every map is a little bit different this way or that way, depending on things you may want to deal with or things you may not. I would like to try, if we could, to have a consensus recommendation to the board, but understanding that we may not be able to totally agree. And again, very sensitive to the differences that we are making in terms of minority population in Districts 2 and District 5. Clearly understand that. I don't think, my opinion, I don't think that the changes that are in any of these maps are significant problems with respect to the minority influence in those districts. I think they're all quite significant and would still be districts of influence irrespective. So let me try this. Let me ask for discussion, but at some point what I'm hearing is a bit of a consensus around 2B. 2B, I'm sorry, just 2B. Is that what I'm hearing?
2B2.
2B2?
2B2.
Now, that's not what Mr. Hecker said.
No,
2B2?
2B2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing some consensus around 2B2. Discussion.
Chairman Lynn,
Dr. Romero.
does Dr. Lee's map move 83, or that piece that I moved out of 2 into 3 at the bottom? Dr. Lee, does your map move that back into 2?
Chair Lynn?
Yeah, can we have that one up again, Eric?
So,
There it is.
I'm sorry, I didn't move anything from,
No, that's still in 3.
yeah, it had this, everything that you had put in, Dr. Romero, except the Marana piece was the, because, it still was in 1, and I talked to Mayor Honey and myself on Friday, and I wanted to make sure that it was as much as possible in one district or the other, so it is in 3. And I also will say that I do want to say that the CVAP minority in District 2 almost goes down 3%, 2.9%. So I'm going to just voice that concern with 2B2. But the staff will have to verify that because, again, this is my own calculations.
Chairman Lynn,
Dr. Romero.
I just want to point out that going from 2B2 to 2B2A, that District 3 loses both overall minority Hispanic and minority Hispanic voting age as well. So I just want to bring that to Mr. Eckert's attention.
How much, Mr. Romero, how much? Does it work
It's
for-
nearly half a percentage in minority over 18. It is almost a full point in minority Hispanics, Hispanics over 18. It is 0.3% in VAP minority, and nearly quite significant in terms of minority VAP, almost 2.6. And I bring that to the attention because, again, as I think it's clear, that is my number one priority.
Gotcha.
In listening to Dr. Lee, and in terms of the 2 maps, in terms of the 2 4 maps, if you will, I couldn't support 2B2 only because I know there's maps out there that are under consideration that provide stronger demographic advancement.
Chair Lynn?
Dr. Lee.
I'm in agreement with Dr. Romero.
Well, with all due respect, it seems to me that 2B2A is so slightly different from 2B2. I'm not sure that it's worth having a disagreement over the 2. I mean, I understand the specific numbers that you're bringing up. I'm simply bringing up the point that if you can make the case that the increased minority population calculation in 2B2A makes that a stronger map, there's very little else difference between the 2 that is of significance as far as I'm concerned, as far as I can see. So from my standpoint, I certainly could be supportive of either one, 2B2 or 2B2A, and I'm more than happy to vote for either one of them if we could arrive at a consensus on either one.
2A does shift population into District 2 and elevates that population.
And 5 as well.
But the deviation is, right now, on 2B2, it's 211,000 population, and under 2B2A, it drops it to 208, roughly 3,000, a little less than 3,000 population-wise.
Yeah, I think I mentioned before that the thing about 2B2A is it doesn't have the underpopulation of the districts where we think growth is going to occur. Having said that, it does have a preferable deviation of population. The population is closer in 2B2A to the ideal.
If I can add, I don't think we have the data to show the trending of that factor either, Dr. Romero. I mean, if you're thinking growth-wise, Sahuarita is probably destined to grow. So do we have any idea what the growth based on the demographic is? Is that going to be growth in the white population, Hispanic population? Because you may be in the short term getting that, but due to growth, it may wipe that out anyways over time.
Yeah, I don't have the data in front of me.
Yeah, I don't either. That's
I
what
access
I'm
that data,
saying.
yeah.
Because back to what Chairman Lynn was saying, I mean, what I'm looking at is, just from my perspective, we have seen let's just say a growth in Districts 1 and District 4 of roughly 10,000 people over 10 years, roughly 1,000 a year. So if you have a 5,000 population shift, what you're going to get is you're going to get one election in 2024 with slightly lower numbers. However, that growth will then catch up, and then that offset will occur with the 2028 election. So you actually divide the election based on population in the middle when you do that. So you get a more closer representation of one man, one vote per district with 2B than with 2B2, rather, with 2B2. So you have an underpopulation in 2024 of 1 and 4, but then you will have an overpopulation of 1 and 4 in 2028. That's the point I was trying to make. So that way there, if you go with 2B2A, you're gonna tilt that slightly to where you're going to have significantly more underpopulation in 2 and overpopulation in 1.
So let me reiterate something I said early in the meeting, but I want to state it again because it's germane to the point you just made. There's a trade-off to be had, I think, between bumping up the minority populations in 2 and 5 and reducing the growth potential in 1 and 4 to the deviations that are in 2B2. And that's a trade-off. Now, the question in my mind is which of those is more important at this point? The only thing I know for sure is that if we were to submit a map to the Board of Supervisors that was very, very close in all districts to the target of 208,860 or whatever the number was, I don't think there would be a problem with that. But I also think that, part of our work product is the consideration of future population growth in 1 and 4. And so underpopulating those, if that were the map we submitted, would go along with the narration that we took that into account and felt that down the road, it would be more likely to produce a one person, one vote result, but it would be in the out years. It would be 2 or 4 years out. And even though we can't predict it, we certainly know that's where the growth will occur, to whatever extent it happens.
Right, and to that point, Mr. Chair, again, back to what Dr. Romero's point is, I don't know what the dilution factor would be from that growth. I mean, how do you figure out what that is? We don't have that data, right? So if you had large, I would argue, Hispanic populations showing up in growth in that general area, it would probably bolster your point. But if it's predominantly, let's just say, white population movement, it's not going to make a difference. It's still going to wash. It's going to decrease that voting population out. I don't know, though. I'm just saying. I'm just assuming. It depends on what racial composite is moving into those areas.
Yeah, I'm just trying to wrap myself around your logic, and I'm not clear in terms of...
The point I was just trying to make is that I think trying to look at keeping the number of people per district as close to possible the same, so that you have one man, one vote, the principle of one man, one vote over the average of 10 years. That's the point I was trying to make. So if you underpopulate 1 and 4 for one election cycle, which would be 2024, the 2024 for the Board of Supervisors we're talking, those would likely be slightly lower as we'll have growth over the next 2 years. We're going to lose some of that. They will start to close that gap, but they will still be slightly underpopulated in 2024. But I would argue that based on the growth trends, 1 and 4 will be overpopulated again by the 2028 election. So what we did is we split the baby so that we have a slight underpopulation of that district in 2024 and then a slight overpopulation in 2028. If you don't do that, then you're going to have a significant overpopulation in 2028.
Yeah, Mr. Lin?
Yeah.
Mr. Attorney, no, I get that.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to get at is the idea in terms of who's actually moving,
Yeah.
who's moving into those spaces.
Right.
We don't know who's moving to those
No.
spaces. And I get the idea in terms of what the trend tells us. I totally get that. But what I don't have in front of me, and what I don't know, and I'm not sure where we could get that data, it tells us 10 years from now what the demographic...
Yeah. Well,
sort of-
that's my point.
Right.
And my point is we don't know what that is
Right.
going to be. So how could we're trying to adjust for that now, and we don't know what that's going to be in 10 years.
And, and I don't mean to be flippant, but I don't have a crystal ball to tell me what that looks like.
I don't either.
And so where I'm at today, in terms of, we sit here today, what I have in front of me are these numbers that tell me what it looks like now and what we're able to create in the moment through couple of particular lenses. And I understand the idea of trend and trying to populate and move population around. But like I said before, my concern is, yeah, we know what's going to happen in terms of what the trend is telling us is going to happen, but I don't know who's going to move in those areas. It may be of that, let's just say hypothetical 10,000 over the 10-year period. Maybe it's 8,000 Latinos, Latino X that move into that area. Maybe it's 5,000. I don't know.
Yeah.
So again, like I said, I'm trying to wrap myself, trying to really hear you,
Yeah.
and trying to interpret what you're saying. And I get it. I'm with you now. I know what you're saying. But like I said before, I don't have the information in front of me to give me the understanding of who's going to move in that area.
Right.
Whereas in the moment, I know who's in these particular areas, where they're at, and how we've moved them around in the current moment to adjust for population deviation, demographic parity. The other concerns were keeping particular cities and towns whole. So given those three lenses, the different maps we have in front of us now is the best I could do to try to come up with that. And if what Dr. Lee is saying, that her data is better in terms of Section 2, then I'm all for it. Because as I said before, I don't think anybody's unaware of the idea that Section 2 is my first priority. So...
No, I got you. I respect that.
Well,
I'm just saying, I don't know what that
I know.
growth is either.
yeah.
From the chair's perspective, and you all gave me this responsibility, so let me express my concern at the moment. I think there are 2 votes for sure for 2B2. I think there are two votes potentially for 2B2A, and then there's the chair. And I really don't want to send a 3-2 vote to the Board of Supervisors. So my question to all of you is there any movement from any of you from your position to make it at least 4-1, if not 5-0, with the understanding that I really don't want to be the 3rd vote on the recommendation, but I would love to be the 5th vote on a unanimous recommendation to the board. Dr. Lee.
Chair Lynn, I'd like to ask staff to put up the map again from the alternative from Dr. Romero's that came up, and then the unincorporated lines.
Dr. Lee, are you talking about your map or?
Yes.
Okay.
Your map or 2B2A?
No, because you ask a good question, Chair Lynn. So I think that the map that I submitted, it gives more population to 2 and to 5. And I think it accomplishes pretty much everything Marana and Sahuarita wanted. And so if we're split, maybe this is a good alternative.
Well, the only thing I would say about that is, and it may very well be a good alternative, and it certainly may be one that I could support, I would want to run all the numbers, because I don't want to vote for a map where we have uneven information. And to that extent, and I don't know what the time frame would be, to run all the numbers to make sure that we had statistical data on your map, just for comparison purposes with everything else we've looked at. But given that that's available, I would be happy to at least look at it and see if it doesn't fill the bill.
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Romero.
how long would it take staff to do that? Is that something that can be accomplished in the next 20, 30 minutes? The reason I say that is I want to be very clear that Dr. Lee was under or believed that the data that she was presenting was stronger in terms of minority VAP data. If that's the case, then by all means I want to support that map, and especially as we've talked about, it accomplishes what Miranda's looking for and most of what Sahuarita's looking for, then by all means I can support that. But I don't want to do so without being informed and yet being able to see the data in front of us.
So to get a full analysis of the map that Dr. Lee just did at the beginning of this meeting, how long would that take?
I'm estimating 15 to 20 minutes, maybe slightly more.
Well, then I'd suggest that we recess for 15 to 20 minutes and see if we can't get that data, so that we can make the same judgment about that map as we have about all the others.
I'll second that.
So let's stand recessed for 20 minutes.
But she said you can...
And we're in session.
Having to.
So I think I would call your attention to whichever of the statistics you're most interested in, and then use that information to go back and check the other one that's being considered, which is 2B or 2BA, 2B2A. Boy, 2B2, 2B2A, and then this one, which we're calling 4.1A. But if you look at the CVAP percentage Hispanic, it shows a decrease on this one, not an increase.
No, this one shows an increase.
Nope, it does not.
No, I'm looking at going through each one. How could it show a decrease?
As to the other districts.
Where are you looking? No.
I'm looking right here.
Mr. Chair?
You're looking at Adelita.
Nope, yeah, I'm looking at that one.
But you got to look at this one,
No, what do you mean, this one?
right here.
This is from that one. This is what this is. It's an extrapolation of that. Dr. Romero did
Correct.
this. So,
Yes.
Oh, that's good.
for example, if you look at 2B2, just as an example,
Okay,
in District 5,
okay.
the Latinx VAP is, 2B2 is 49.8. Here, it's 46.8.
Well, I think you
drop
have
of
to
3.
look at apples to apples.
I am.
No, take
I
a
am
look at this.
Looking at apples to apples.
Okay, but excuse me, Chair Lynn, I don't see Latinx right here.
It's
And
Hispanic on here.
I don't see,
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It is voting age population Latino, Hispanic.
Here,
It's
point it
the
out,
same-
point it out here for me.
It's this.
I know, but let me, so this is, just help me understand. So right now, this 4.1 is CVAP Hispanic is 16.1, correct?
In District 1, that's correct.
Okay, and in District 2B2A, I have it at 15.1.
I'm not worried about District 1, I'm worried about District 2 and 5.
Okay, then for District 2, I have it at 43.2 in 2B2A,
Correct?
and I have it at 43 in this.
Yeah, down 0.2%.
Okay, and I think that's what we had agreed upon, and we had talked about it was a 0.2% difference. Then for 3, it's down 1, it's down 1 point, no, it's down less than 1, or it's a little more than 1.
0.7.
And then for 4, it's down, and for 6,
It's the same.
5, it's the same.
It's the same.
So,
5 doesn't change all the way through.
no. And 4 and 2 goes up, or is close to the same. So what's the issue there?
I don't have an issue, I'm
Oh.
just pointing it out.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
trying to get a consensus of the committee to make a recommendation. So you now have this information, which includes a population deviation of 3.2%, which is the highest of any of the maps we've been considering. I'm pointing it out. I'm not saying it's a fatal flaw. I'm saying it's a fact.
Sure.
And if you look at the population of the districts, District 1 and District 4 are underpopulated to account for future growth. So that's a plus for the 4.1A. And it really makes very little difference in terms of the minority population of the district.
So the primary difference would be going back to the map of the incorporated Marana. because that's where it made a big difference. So if you take a look at the map, you will see, can we pull up the actual districtor, the colored map for 4.1A?
I'm sure we can, and you want to overlay the jurisdictional map?
Yeah. If it's all right with you.
Anything's all right with me.
It's kind of hard to see because it's green and blue, but you can, it looks to me like all of Marana is now in 3. So that's one advantage.
Absolutely.
I don't think it makes much of a difference.
Can we, Mr. Chair, can we pull the data back up so we can have the data comparison?
Sure.
Yep, yeah.
Oh, that's good, on their screens here, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to look at this a little bit deeper.
Sure, you bet.
Thank you, by the way.
If you're interested in the total population or age, I can slide that over. Just let me know.
Thanks, Eric.
It's kind of hard to see.
Actually, you can slide it over a little bit because we know what the districts they're in, if you want to go to the right a little bit.
Correct, thank you.
Yeah.
There you go.
Mr. Chair, if I could just take a second. We jumped in the data. We're all interested in getting the data and looking at this. But if I could just thank staff for their expeditious actions and helping us get to this point. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I think on behalf of all the committee, the staff has been terrific through the whole process.
Absolutely.
They've done everything we've asked them to do, very often in short time frame, and they've really been responsive. And I want to be sure that the board knows that and how much we appreciate it.
Absolutely. I can't really see too well.
Once you've had an opportunity to digest the numbers, in order to move us along, I think what I'd like to do is begin the process of trying to get a consensus on a map. And in doing that, I would ask if someone wants to offer a motion to adopt one of the maps we're looking at, we can at least see where we are and see if there's enough support to go in one of the directions.
I could barely tell any difference between, 4.1 and 2B2 on the Hispanic demographic data. Is there, other than in District 1, I see a big jump, but it's relatively the same in the two we're concerned about. In 2 and in 5, it's still 43% and roughly 46.8%. So I don't know what we accomplished with that. That's what, I mean, is that what we were trying to do? Were we trying to bump up the Hispanic voting age population and the CVP, CVAP percent? I mean, was that the goal of that?
So, Chair Lynn?
Dr. Lee.
So when I ran the, just on Districtor, it came to slightly different because, I don't know, but it looked like it was higher, but it's virtually very similar.
Oh, it's almost identical.
So I think the key is, does the map satisfy other goals? And I would, the one thing that it does accomplish is giving Marana all to 3. And that was a difference.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Hecker.
My concern, and I'm going somewhat from memory of the other map, is that we told the public that we were focusing on 2B2, and is it 4 that we're talking about?
4.1A.
4.1A moves a lot of people around. And it, if I recall, drawing a line down Shannon, that's just a lot of people moving from 1 into 3, when we had said that we were going to focus on 2B2. And I don't want to have another meeting, but it is a pretty dramatic shift from what we said we were focusing primarily on.
Other than what Mr. Hecker just said, I don't really see data-wise much of a difference between 2B2 and 4.1.
In terms of the statistics we're focusing in on, for example, minority populations, those are virtually the same.
Yeah.
Virtually the same. Where there is a difference, clearly, is that more of Marana has moved to 3. But to do so, Mr. Hecker's point is well taken. It's not just like moving one precinct. There are 8 or 9 precincts that are actually moved from one to the other. I understand the point he's making is we had said we were going to work off of 2B2 for the as we moved forward, and there is a significant difference, I think, in the number of precincts that wound up in District 3. Mr. Hecker.
And if I could add to that, Marana expressed their support for 2B2, if I recall.
They read a statement from Mayor Honey today that he said it didn't matter if it was in 1 or 3, just as long as it was together in one district. And so 2B does not go far enough.
Well, it doesn't go, it goes as far as it goes, which is all but 3% of Marana is in District 3.
No, it's 3% of the district. That's what that is.
So how about the,
3%.
Well, okay.
so could we ask the question, Mr. Chair, on the concern with regard to what Mr. Romero raised on the Hispanic population? Is there still a problem here between those two, or does this satisfy what you were worried about?
Which map are we talking about
The
specifically?
difference between 2B2 and 4.1.
Yeah, I agree. There isn't much of a difference.
Yeah.
If 4.1A accomplishes what we need to accomplish in regards to Marana, I can support it.
How about with regard to Mr. Hecker's concern, where you're moving a lot of people, and that's a concern, would you support 2B2 as well, since it doesn't affect the numbers?
The numbers are, going back to my original point, that I know that there's something out there better. So is there a way to, that's what I was trying to accomplish with 4.1, was the idea of trying to get to a place where everyone was accommodated as much as possible while keeping Section 2 at the front of the line.
But
So-
4.1 is actually 2.2A now.
Correct, now, yes. So in terms of what I would support, I can't at this point in time support 2B2. because I know there's other maps out there that are better.
But sorry, but
From-
what criteria?
From Section 2, from a Section 2 perspective. That's my number one criteria.
But it's not much different than 4.1.
But it's different. But it's different.
In the two districts that we're concerned about?
If you take a look at, well, okay, let me back up. In the two districts we're most concerned with, yes, you're absolutely right. Okay, there is not very much difference at all. In fact, there is no difference. But what I'm looking at is a much deeper impact countywide in terms of a map that creates stronger parity. So that's what I try to accomplish with 4.1. If you take a look at 2B2, that data, and if you take a look at 2B2A, my representative in 5, there's almost no impact. And from that perspective, I can walk away and say, okay, we're all good. But what I'm trying to accomplish is more of a county parity sort of orientation from a Section 2 perspective.
Well, just to be clear, are you saying you can't support the map you drew, which is now 2.2B2A?
No. No. I can support that, and I'm in support of Dr. Lee's as well.
Gotcha.
Okay?
What I'm trying to do is see if there's any movement among the committee members, and I have 2 committee members who wanted to propose 2B. 2B2. And I don't see a lot of difference between 2B2 and 2B2A. And it maintains the concern that Mr. Hecker raised in terms of the number of precincts that move, and the Hispanic population and the Latino population and the minority population remains virtually the same. So I'm wondering if we couldn't reach a consensus on 2B2A as the map. Because I can support that map.
And I could too, because it only does one precinct.
Right.
District 4. I mean, it's the same.
Right.
Chair Lynn, I could support
Dr.
2B2A.
How about you, Blair?
Then would somebody make a motion to adopt
I move that we adopt 2B2A
as our recommendation?
as
to the
our
Board of
recommendation to the board.
Is there a second?
Second?
Discussion on the motion. Hearing none. I'm going to do a roll call, just for giggles. So, Diana, would you call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Lin?
Aye.
Dr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Hecker?
Aye.
Mr. Antonori?
Aye.
Dr. Romero?
Aye.
By a vote of 5-0, we are recommending map 2.2A to the Board of Supervisors for the redistricted Pima County for the next decade. First and foremost, we've already thanked the staff, and I want to reiterate that, and in the record, make sure that the board knows that the staff did a fantastic job. I also want to thank my fellow commissioners, my fellow committee members. I think this has been an instructive, it has been a cordial, it has been a good learning experience for all of us, and I don't know that a group could have done better with the kind of good feelings and comedy that we had among ourselves. And so I think we ought to thank those who appointed us for doing so, and congratulate them for putting a group together that can do this kind of work. Thank you all very much. Is there anything else to come before? Any other comments from the commissioners? Let's start with that.
Yes,
Mr. Hecker.
Mr. Chair, I think the wisest choice we've made in this whole process is to elect you as chair.
Absolutely.
You've done a tremendous job.
Yes,
Tremendous
you have.
job, and
You
I'm
really
grateful, and I take full credit because
I understand there will be payback, and I'm very concerned about what that might be.
And
Dr. Romero.
I second Mr. Eckert's thought. I very respectfully appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
And I would like to say thank you to Chair Lynn, and really appreciate you listening to all points of view.
Thank you very
Excellent.
much. All right. Having no further business, we are adjourned, and thank you all very much.